My name is Samantha Menley. For those of y'all who do not know me, I am the community coordinator for the 200,000 More Reasons initiative. I work alongside Mary Louise Dassinger, who is our project coordinator. We are hosting this panel in conjunction with the Methodist Foundation for Arkansas. Reverend Mackie Yoakum, if you would like to kick us off with a prayer, or if you want to say anything, I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. Well, just first of all, a word of welcome to everybody. Glad that they're joining in the conversation and look forward to our time this afternoon as we think together and work together, plan together, and hope together for the work that binds us together. Let us begin with a word of prayer. Let us pray. Gracious God, we give thanks for this time together, for the discussion that we will have, and for the plans that we will discuss as we talk about how we might serve our neighbors and communities. Bless the leaders, bless all of those participants, but particularly bless the work that we are involved in and what we hope to do for your kingdom. In Christ's name, amen.
All right, so this first hour, we're going to start with some grant writing and some funding opportunities beyond seeking a 200,000 More Reasons or a Methodist Foundation grant. So Cindy, I'm going to start with you. If you'll introduce yourself, where you're from, and kind of what your role is with the Clark County Ecumenical Food Pantry. Let's start there.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for inviting me. I am honored, and I am Cindy Jackson. I'm co-director or co-operationals director and founder of the Clark County Ecumenical Food Pantry. As of last week, we now have 11 churches in our area that are participating with us in our food distribution ministry. Did you want me just to start digging in with what I do?
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
Or the questions that you gave me?
Well, yeah, so when you're looking for grants, where do you begin to find those?
Okay. I just do want to say that looking at this array of people out here, many of you might have written many more grants than I do. And I'm not a professional grant writer. I am a volunteer. So if anybody knows more than me, please chip in. But where I begin to look, I really hate writing. I hate asking for money. And that's something that we have to get over because there's money out there that we can look at and that people are willing to give us. Where I look really depends on the organization. So, you need to know what your organization does and more importantly, what you need. But there are 3 levels of grants that I look at: local, statewide, and then national grants. Now, I usually leave the national grants for something big, a building or the state and national. I'm going to revise that a little bit. If I'm looking at a building or some massive projects, I'll look at those levels. Locally, I think, and statewide, I think we'd be surprised at what's out there. Locally, I look for churches and foundations. Now, I live in Arkadelphia, and so we are blessed with 2 universities. And along with that, we have 1, 2, 3 different foundations. And they grew out of families that were in the logging industry. So what I would advise is go around town and even around your county and look at the buildings, see who they're named for. My Sunday school class meets in the Sturgis building. Well, somebody on our board of directors, so ask your board of directors as well, who do they know? And just out of the blue, one of our board of directors from the Presbyterian church said, gosh, she goes to my church. Let me talk to her. And $10,000 every year for the last 3 years. So ask your board, look at buildings. Higginbotham is a big name around the OBU campus. name, it's on buildings. There's another Sturgis building. So just be aware of what's around you. And don't be afraid to ask. A lot of times I will get online and looking at your ages, you're probably a lot better off than I am when doing a search. But search for what you need. And I just put in just to see what would happen, searching for nonprofit organizations, nonprofit grants, and I got a million things. I would just be careful though with you shouldn't have to pay for a grant. Okay, be real careful about where you look. If it looks like you're going up the road, you get as far as X and you get all these wonderful names, but to get to the name, you have to pay for it. Don't do it. Just copy down the name and go directly to the grantor. I use keywords for things that I need. My advice is don't go to a hardware store for bread, meaning read what your grantor wants, the do's and don'ts of this grant. We do fund this, we don't fund that. Very few people will fund salaries. Very few local and statewide organizations will fund buildings. So just know what you have there and honor that. Grants.gov, if you want to mess with the government, have at it. We don't write those grants, although I am interested in listening to the USDA person and seeing how that worked. Let me think here.
Cindy, I have a question.
Sure.
Do you have a general like your mission statement and your statement of the need of your organization? Is that something that you have written that you plug in every time, or do you rewrite a grant? What would you suggest there?
I do not, I keep 7 things in my pocket because there are basics that every grantor is going to ask you. And that's a really good question. Now, I don't rewrite unless it's something spectacularly different, and they're really not. So what I keep in my pocket is first my organizational mission. Know your organization, know your mission, and know why you're different. I keep highlights of what we do that's different because you may have a grant that's really everybody wants, and you need to know, you need to present, this is what I do, and this is what I do best, and this is what I do differently. So I keep that around. I keep year-to-date statistics around and the last year's statistics as well, so we can show growth or lack of growth, whatever the question would be, but keep your year-to-date statistics up. A sustainability plan. Now, when I first ran across this, I thought, what? But it's important that your grantor know that you can grow beyond, this isn't just a 12-month deal. Now, it might be a 12-month project within your organization, but they really are looking for sustainability. Keep your budget on hand. And then how will you measure success? What are your goals and how do you know you got there? So those are the 7 things I really keep in my back pocket.
All right, thank you. Do you have, I saw you flipping a page. Do you have more notes more advice you'd like to share?
Well, as far as tips for first-time writers, do know your organization and what you do. There's nothing worse than writing and you don't know what they really do because it's going to come to light soon. I would encourage you, if you're only grant writing and you're not involved in the organization, volunteer for their busiest day and stay there and look and see what they do. If you're writing for project transformation, go read to the kids. Look at some stories. Let's see. Yeah, hang out where the work is done. And it'll give you a much better perspective and a much better picture of what you're writing for. I've already said that. Keep it short. using lots of words and being really verbose is boring. And it's, to me, it's suspect. Keep it brief, keep it to the point, and don't make them read 3 and 4 pages about what you're doing unless you really have something valid that you're doing in those 3 to 4 pages. Use the terminology that the grant writer uses. Pick out words that they use and address those goals or those words. Keep it honest and be transparent, especially with your budget. You know, a lot of times I hesitate because it looks like our budget for the Clark County Ecumenical Food Pantry is tremendous. We should be able to do anything, but we can't. And so I have to write to that. Why am I needing your $10,000 to buy food? So keep it transparent. Use your budget, plug it in there. Brag on yourself. Your organization is a good one. Otherwise, you wouldn't be applying for money. So brag on yourself, what we do well. And if you have questions, call the grantor. Don't just guess, just call them up. You can submit a letter of intent, like I intend to apply for your grant, and this is what I'd like to do. Does it meet your specifications? And they'll answer you. And don't take no for an answer. Now, by that, I don't mean be ugly about it, but if you're turned down, that's okay. If you're turned down, pick up the phone and call and ask why. Not challenging them, but I need to grow from this. What were you looking for that I didn't provide or whatever? But keep those lines of communication open and always say thank you. Whether you got the grant or not, thank you for the opportunity. Look forward to working with you again. That's basic politeness, but something that I think I used to forget at first. And then I think the last tip I would give is keep your deadlines. Read the letter that you get when you get the grant, underline those dates, and make sure that you meet those deadlines. Nothing worse than meeting the deadline, and take it seriously, because if someone says, and I just submitted a grant this past week and I couldn't find anybody in the office and I was close enough to the deadline, I didn't want to send it through the post office. So at least by calling that office, they knew that I was submitting, and I put it in their mailbox and they knew it was there. So meet those deadlines and keep those lines of communication open. Does anybody have any questions?
Cindy,
Grant
Cindy,
writers. Yes,
yeah,
ma'am.
Cindy, do you use when you say keep things in your back pocket, that do you use a lot of the same information in all your grants, so you kind of have your standard grant narrative and then you just tweak it per each application?
Yes.
Yeah. How many
Yeah.
grants do you write a year?
Oh gosh. I never thought about that one. Probably about 5 to 6, depending on which grants are open. Sometimes, for instance, the Arkansas Community Foundation and United Way is a good example. I used to write United Way every year, but now they're going to an every other year schedule. So 5 or 6. And it depends on if I need something extra, like if we need equipment, then I'll write a couple more. Oh, and I forgot. Thank you for that question, because you want to go to your local organizations as well. Rotary Club, oh, they're great. Kiwanis, if you have, if you're dealing with kids.
And Cindy, are y'all y'all are a separate 501c3 from Arkadelphia First, right?
No, we're not. We're
No.
under the auspices of their 501c3, which is sometimes a detriment because I can't get beyond, even though I have the letter from the state and the federal government, we're not independent. So for instance, for the Baptist, no, not Baptist, for the Arkansas Blue Cross Blue Shield grants, I can't get beyond the initial registration application.
Okay, do you have anything else to speak to the obstacles of working under, as we segue into Reverend Sam Metters talking about becoming a 501c3? What are the obstacles that you see there working under Arkadelphia First United Methodist 501c3 status?
I really haven't had any obstacles except for that one grantor. And usually they offer a grant that's so large that we wouldn't apply for it because I couldn't use, I know it's odd, it sounds odd, but for what we need, we couldn't use that much money. And we're not doing that large a project. So for right now, we're okay. And I'm looking forward to hearing his why I might be better off.
Okay. Sam, I'm gonna pass it to you to maybe talk about some of the advantages of separating your feeding ministry into becoming a 501c3 separate from your church's 501c3 status.
Yeah. And I will, I don't know that I want to persuade you either way. Let me just put it that way. I want you to do what's best for your ministry. And so, and I also want to just put the caveat out there that the reason why I am a part of a 501c3 outside of the church is not for feeding necessarily, but more for a literacy-based ministry that is needed to be separate for a number of reasons. But let me speak a little bit to kind of what that looked like for our organization in terms of getting started. When I was doing kind of what Samantha's doing now, we were founding Project Transformation Arkansas a few years ago. And we knew that we needed to be an independent 501c3 so that we could be competitive for grants, but also because we are a part of a national organization that asks us to kind of take that on for ourselves, knowing that there are limitations to, particularly for us, to being related to a conference office. And so we have chapters that do that. It has worked well in some places, but for instance, in North Texas and Central Texas, the conferences just merged. And so there were a lot of questions as to both of those conferences had a project transformation and what happens when the conferences merge and one of them is inside and one of them is outside. And so similarly with the church, if you're working with the church, something happens with the church and the ministry is to the community, what might happen in those instances where things are shifting in the church world and you still want to be able to offer those services in the community? For us, what this looked like is we had to work on creating bylaws that met the standards of the state of Arkansas. I was fortunate to be able to work with one of our now DSs on those bylaws, who is a former attorney, so that they could look over and make sure that we met all of the ideals. Once we had that, though, we really went to we went to a CPA. You can also go to a lawyer, and worked with them together with them to apply to become an independent 501c3. For us, that made a lot of sense to take that route because we did want to start raising money. Having our own bank account was a part of that. So if your funds are still in your church account or related there, that's something to think about. Is there a separate account that you need to be able to put things in? We also, trying to think of what all we worked through. This is a silly thing. I'm just gonna share it with you. Our biggest challenge was honestly our name. We already had a name. We knew what we were gonna call ourselves. We're a part of a national organization. And then we got to the part where we had to name ourselves for the state of Arkansas, and that name was taken. And so actually it was reversed. So there is a transformation project literally down the road from Project Transformation. And we were told we could not use our name. So we were trying to work with them to get something going. It took us about 6 months to figure that out. The whole process in general took probably about 8 months, and 6 of that was us figuring out a name. So if that is not your problem, that is not your problem, but it was ours. And again, we were working with a CPA who could kind of fill out the paperwork. If you're not familiar with the legalese, I recommend having someone who is to help you through that process. And you know, this was not a costly thing. There are a lot of people who do this. This was a member of one of our partner churches who worked with us, and we did pay an amount. We paid them, but we for their services, but we also paid the government to kind of start that process. If I believe that all told it was under $1,000. All of those pieces together to have our 501c3 status here in the state. And of course, you're filing for your articles of incorporation as a business, then your nonprofit status through the government, then you have to come back and say that you're a nonprofit to the state. There's a little bit of work in all of that. Any questions about that before I just jump through? Because I'm looking at you and realizing this may be way beyond.
Can you speak to the other grant opportunities you've had being a 501c3 outside of being a faith-based organization?
Yeah, and admittedly, like I ran into this, as you were saying, Cindy, I ran into this a few times doing feeding ministries in Northeast Arkansas. There would be times when the door didn't open because we were part of a church organization. There were things we were doing in the community that I thought, oh, this fits really well. You know, we can reach out and do an Arkansas Blue and You grant, and I would get on to figure out how to fill out the things, and I'd keep typing things in and nothing was popping up. So one of the nice parts about having our own independent number is that then when we go to fill out any of those grants, we automatically, you know, it pulls everything up. We don't have to worry about whether we fit or not. And especially in grants where there's a lot of criteria, where it's, you know, very clearly you either have to be a government agency, a school or a library, or a 501c3. Sometimes they will even say like not religiously affiliated, right? Or they'll say not churches. And so sometimes you do have, it is nice to be able to apply for those grants that fit for a 501c3, especially for ministries where we're not, our primary aim is to feed, perhaps not to evangelize, and that's the worry. And so how we kind of work through that is by having this separate entity. Does that make some sense to folks?
Yeah, absolutely. Can you speak to a little bit, and I know that you're not necessarily feeding directly, but how will becoming a 501c3 separate from the church, like how could that impact maybe the church's thoughts on what their feeding ministry looks like, or you know, kind of, I don't want to say the optics, but the optics of, is our church getting out of the feeding business if we're putting it into this separate organization?
Yeah, and I think one of the beautiful things is that I didn't ever feel like becoming a separate entity was taking us away from the church. I really thought it was putting us into the community, which is what we wanted to do anyway, right? We wanted to be in the midst of everyone. And so really for us, going into the community made a whole lot of sense. And it also allowed us to have some partners that we may not have thought about. I always tell people I'm in ministry to be in ministry at the seams, like where we come together, right? That's the beauty of our connectional church. So, you know, for instance, I think an ecumenical food pantry is a great one that would be a really great way to get other people involved. Maybe if it has your church's name on it, there are some folks who go, well, like that's their thing. But if you can reach out into the community and say, hey, you know, we've separated this. This is no longer, you know, the church pantry. This is now, you know, I'm think Bread of Life is the one that I was associated with at Harrisburg. This is now the Bread of Life Pantry. What does that say that's a little bit different that may invite some other people in? Whether that's other churches, whether that's other organizations, it kind of helps to tear down just some of the walls that people may have when it comes to this being just about your congregation. When we know, and I'll say this for probably all of us, there always seems to be a lack of funding. There always seems to be a lack of volunteers. There always seems to be we have a little bit of scarcity, not in our mindset, hopefully, but in in reality. And so opening up those doors can also open up some other avenues for some new partnerships.
Awesome. I will let you deep dive because I know the other portion of being a 501c3 is the 990 form. So if you want to give folks a kind of
Overview.
cliff notes for
Okay. So note, my background is in ministry, okay? This is not my forte, but I will tell you that having now transitioned as an executive director of a nonprofit organization, one of the things that was very surprising to me is having to fill out a 990 form. So one of the things that does happen when you become a 501c3 is that not only, well, and something else that you may consider too is 501c3s do need to have their own governing board. They may need to have their own insurance and director insurance as well. So that may be an additional cost, a yearly cost, just so that you're making sure that, you know, you're covered if something happens and there is something that is untrue to your organization. But the thing that was most surprising to me after working in a Wesley Foundation that was associated with the church is this 990. So every year, because we are a public entity, all of what we any way that money comes in or out of our organization is shared publicly, and that is what happens with a 990 form. Okay, so I submit those completely online. They're actually required now to be submitted online. I can do mine myself. You can also pay someone or have someone who's associated with the church or the ministry do those. There are a few different levels to them in terms of whether they're really easy if you have like under, a certain amount of money. I think it's under 80,000 and then up to 200,000 and then beyond 500,000, they get way more complicated. But I'm sharing things like who my funders are. So this is another way to look if you are surrounded by other people who may be 501c3s, it's another way to look for grants. I'm sharing who those people are who have given money to our organization. So you can go and again, this is all public information. You can go and see how we spend our dollars, what they go to and where and how that works. You can also see things like what our mission statement is, the number of people we've served, what our primary activities were. That's all available in that 990 document. And that's to help with transparency and accountability for nonprofit organizations. Every year they change a little bit, just like all of our tax forms change, so it's a little bit of a guessing game as to how things are always going to work. But it does take a little bit of time. And it's kind of like unlike our taxes where, everyone's are due on April 15th. These are due 4 months after the end of your fiscal year. So for me, they're always due in January, which is not my favorite time to be doing anything, but that's when they're always due. And there are penalties if you don't have them in. So if you do not submit those in a timely manner, there's a daily penalty for not submitting them. There's also, if you haven't done it in 3 years, then you don't, your status is revoked and you have to go back. So it really is a way for us to keep us accountable to those people who are pouring into our nonprofit entities. But, yeah.
Right. Anyone thinking about becoming a 501c3 that has any questions for Sam? I'm going to read some of our questions from the chat that are for Cindy and Sam. Regina, is your question, did most of your funding come from your church? Is that about being a 501c3 and then the church funding it, or
Well, in our case, obviously, we are under our church's umbrella totally. It's mainly funded by our church and the members. It's not technically in the budget, but we built our building through the church and our main funding. And that's why I was asking, did most of the funding come from the church? Because in our case, we would have to separate completely. And I don't think it would make a lot of sense for us to do that at this point. I can see in your case, because like in your case, with 11 churches, you're raising $35,000. So you've got to get out there and find a lot more funding sources than, we're very blessed in that we have a lot available to us now. So that's kind of what I was asking. And she did give me that answer, so I appreciate that.
Yes, and then Mary Lewis, do you want to speak to Judy's question that she asked in the chat? I see that you answered it to her.
Judy asked in the chat about figuring out what resources already exist around feeding ministries to identify what is actually needed. And that's a great question. Part of what we can do as a feeding ministry is kind of asset map our communities for what exists already. Contacting the regional food bank who serves your county, they will know of different types of programs where their particular food pantries are. Calling other churches that you've heard may or may not have food pantries, asking those who do come to your church if they know of other food pantries. Calling nonprofits that are related to food will be a great resource, but also the Arkansas Hunger Relief Alliance. They have a lot of programs and know a lot of what's happening in each county. And so that would be another way of saying, what do y'all know about resources? When you're looking for access to food, not just food pantries, but backpack programs or something, school food pantries. I know a lot of food banks have transitioned from backpack programs to school food pantries because they're more sustainable. So you can call your local schools to see if they have access to food. And local libraries, you can call them and say, what partnerships do you have that provide food? So think about all the places where kids, in particular, live, learn, and play, and look at what organizations exist around them and see where they might be accessing food. For elderly, I would call your area council on aging, and they may know where elderly people can access food.
Thank you. All right.
Anybody have anything to offer with that? Judy Hall, Michelle Marr said, look at Mission Insight if you're as part of the United Methodist Church. Look at Michelle. She's got some great answers in her different ways to do it. Chat GPT can help too, for sure.
So if you're not looking to completely move away from your church funding and your church 501c3, another option is to expand through the federal government. And so I'm going to turn it over to Justin to tell us a little bit how CrossIt, First United Methodist Church, got USDA funding and how they maintain it. So I'll just let you start.
All right. Yes. So I'm Justin Reed. We are actually the Greater CrossIt Area Food Pantry. We do have several individuals from our church who are involved. However, we have our own community board. And this pantry started in the Presbyterian Church in the 70s. So it's been around for a while. And actually, the USDA was prior to my getting there. I tried to get more answers on it, but I do have Martha on here, who is our director, and she deals with the USDA commodities for just regular commodities, and then there's also senior commodities that you can qualify for as well. And those go through the Arkansas food bank, I believe. But Martha, can you speak a little more on that?
Well, I'm like you. That was set up before I came on board. But as far as, if we're needing more, we have until the fall of the year to request more USDA food to get it for the next year. And senior boxes, that must have been asked before I got there too, because right after I came on board, they increased our senior boxes. As far as the application, I've not had to go through that yet, so I don't know what that entails, but I will stay in contact with Debbie Trickett at Arkansas Food Bank. Make sure we don't miss a deadline or anything to see about increasing ours for next year. Since we are going to plan to go countywide, we know that we will need more USDA food on hand.
So yeah, we've gone through every year we buy a lot of our food from the Arkansas Food Bank, and they have an annual meeting each year, and it's there that you can sign up through the USDA commodities, and someone at the Arkansas Food Bank they are very helpful and knowledgeable, and that they're the ones that put us onto that. I just don't know the details of the applications and everything, but there are strict guidelines, and you have to follow those closely. You can't just give those to anyone, and you have to enter all of that information into the Arkansas Food Bank's system. So when we see a client, Martha and Diane will have to go in and put in all the details of that individual. And every time they get it, they have to come in and enter that into the system and fill out or make sure they have all the information in there and have them sign and all of that. And we have to keep up with all documentation, and each year, as Martha mentioned, we did increase our number of senior boxes a couple of years ago. But you have to have all that ready and available, that information, and a lot of their pertinent information and again, you have to be on the Arkansas Food Bank's software system. And Martha can speak a little more on that.
That's the Oasis system, and we're able to pull any report, tell them how many USDA per month, per week, per quarter, however they ask for it. You have to be in good standings with them. You can't have any past due outstanding statements. You have to order, I think, 6 times a year to be in good standing, which that's never a problem for us on that. You do retain your records for, I think, up to 3 years, and always be ready when they walk through the door to do inspections. If you keep it done up, you don't have to worry about trying to do it when they walk through the door on you. So it's never been a problem so far since they've visited us on anything, or if we've had to call and ask them. Just tell them, I don't know. Can you lead me in the right direction? This is where we're aiming to go. How do we get there? They've all been helpful on everything.
And Martha, how many do we give out per month for regular commodities and senior?
I'm gonna estimate about 240 for both. Yeah.
And
so
can y'all for those of us who maybe don't know, what are commodities?
okay, that is government issued food, USDA. To our clients, we call it the regular commodities because they're used to getting it in a black bag. So we tell them it's their black bag commodities. We never know what it is till they're getting it, till we get it on the truck Tuesday, get it bagged up, and they get it. The senior commodity, you have to be over 60. Well, with both of them, it's income based, but senior boxes, you have to be 60 or older. And here recently, it was one per household, but now even husband and wife can get the senior boxes. They can each get one. And it's just staying up to date on any changes that they make, that will help them. And
what all typically comes in a box, Martha? I mean, I know there's different stuff each month.
It
We
is
don't
different
know till we
things.
get it, but
Yeah, and every once in a while, they all come sealed, but every once in a while, we just get nosy and open up one so that we can sort of tell them what they're getting. A lot of times it's dry milk, it's peanut butter, it's rice, it's beans, it may be juice, it may be chicken in a bag, already ready to go. Just a variety of things in there, and they all get the commodity box cheese. Do not let them leave out without getting the cheese, because you will get a phone call about it. They love that cheese that comes with that senior box. But it does change every month. Usually they do get cereal in there. So that's why the dry milk is a big plus for them.
How has having commodities expanded y'all's ability to serve your community?
Oh, it's gave us the ability to, if they just come in for pantry and that's all they were getting, that was sustainable a little while. But the time if they come in, get pantry, USDA, and senior box, I mean, that's triple the food that they were getting, and
and
so
these aren't small boxes. The ladies sometimes have trouble picking those
yeah,
commodity boxes up, 'cause it's
right,
quite a bit of food. And again, we don't
it did.
always know for sure what's in it, but sometimes they have to box them up for them. But I would say, like Martha said, we're giving 240 boxes out. Mary Lewis, it's significantly increased, which our food budget in 2024 was around $35,000 is what we spent on food purchases at the Arkansas Food Pantry and local grocery stores. Of course, we get donations from local grocery stores, from Walmart and stuff like that. But I would say the commodities are, probably a third or maybe more of what we give out in total. And of course, that's
Right.
no financial burden on us. Food costs have gone up. It's crazy expensive. So I would say if you were able, the USDA commodity route it has helped our community for sure. And it's been a lot of food. It's more paperwork and regulation and and all of that, but it's definitely been a positive
It's
for
worth it.
us.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so I saw in the chat, you have to keep those separate from your regular donations. So how much
Yes.
extra storage does that take?
A lot.
Well, and
We
thanks to
have,
the Arkansas Methodist Foundation, we were able to expand, which
yes,
really helped with
yes,
that. But go ahead, Martha. Sorry.
yeah. We have to, we keep our pantry items separate. You have to have a separate commodity room for any USDA or senior boxes. You cannot, store them in the same room. Thanks to the foundation, we were able to put in a cooler, walk-in cooler, so that allows us to keep our items like that better regulated, and they last longer for our clients. But yeah, it does take more room. But again, we have shelves that we put our bagged food on, our USDA black bags. That's what our clients are used to calling them. But it's work and it's thought that goes into it, but it is well worth it if you're in it to help the people that has food insecurities. I mean, it's nothing out of your pocket, but it goes a long way to the clients.
Jeff, quick, since you're a food bank representative on here, what
Yeah.
kind of relationship do our pantries need to have with the food bank in order to see if they can get commodities for their community?
So first of all, I would just say that I work with the Food Bank of North Central Arkansas. There are 6 Feeding America food banks across the state. Lowell, Arkansas, Fort Smith, Texarkana, Little Rock, and Jonesboro, in addition to us in Mountain Home. And all of those food banks may have a little bit different process to answer your question, Mary Lewis. But for us, you must be a member in good standing, similar to what Martha said. Our good standing requires you to receive food from us a minimum of 4 times a year or once a quarter. And then we would need to have watched you work and make sure that that your reporting is in good shape and that you can handle the process of managing all the documentation that goes with it. In regard to the storage space, literally your food can be on the same shelf. It just has to be clearly identified that these shelves are USDA, and other shelves on the same shelving unit can be purchased or donated foods, but you have to manage your inventory separately, and that works for cold storage as well as dry storage. And then someone asked about, what information do you require? It's literally a state issued ID, and then they self-declare their income status. We don't need to see any kind of proof about that. And when they sign that they received the food, they are signing that they did not receive USDA commodity foods anywhere else during that given month, and that their information that they've provided to us is correct. I'll go back to Martha's, and Justin, I think, mentioned this too about the application process. For us, the application is just telling your regional food bank you want to be a part of this program. And then we reach out to the USDA office in Little Rock, and we ask for permission to add you, and you're good to go. With our food bank, you can tell us on a month-to-month basis, wow, we have more clients coming in, and TFAP, the Emergency Food Assistance Program, which is the regular food pantry commodity program, available to anyone, regardless of their age, as long as they qualify for income. That one, you can just say every month, hey, I need more. But the CSFP, which is Commodity Supplemental Food Program, that's the senior food box that they've been talking about. And all of us are required to gather up our information from our waiting list to be on that program, submit that usually at about September to the state office. Then by about January, they're required to send that to the national office, where they wait for a response. And usually it takes most of the spring for the national office to get back to the state office and to tell them how much they have increased their caseload for the entire state. And then the state works with us. And usually by, I'm going to say, April or May, we're able to increase caseloads in local food pantries.
So you're looking at what, 6 months waiting list for the senior food boxes? Waiting process?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of depends on, like if you told us in January of this year that you wanted to be a part of the senior food box, you may be waiting until, 14 or 15 months.
Got it. Okay.
You're required to keep a wait list for that senior food box.
Yes.
And that wait list means that, like if Mary Lewis, if you were on that program, I'm required to give you your box every month. That's my job as a part of this program. If you, for whatever reason, drop out of the program, or let's say you were hospitalized or you went into a nursing facility, whatever the case might be, then I could reach out to Cindy, who's first on my list, and invite her to accept your box. But there is a process before you are off of the list, before we can put Cindy permanently on it. There's quite a bit of work that goes with it, but it's absolutely worth it. The senior food box is about 25 to 30 pounds, and then the TFAP for all ages depends on the amount of foods that the commodities program is able to distribute to the food banks.
Okay, so
free.
I understand this right. If you're a food pantry administrator or volunteer even, you have a senior who wants a box, you have to keep a list of that, turn it in, request that of your food bank. They keep that on a list. They send it to the state office, and eventually the state office sends it to national office. It comes back and reverses the list. Is that
Yep.
correct?
That's
Okay,
right.
got it.
All right, we had a couple of questions in the chat that I know that you answered, but just in case somebody didn't see it. So the information required from clients to get the food and what proof they have to provide. And then you said state issued ID and they self-declare their income. Then Cindy asked, self-declaring your income is good enough for the government?
Yes. Yeah, and that keeps the monkey off of our shoulders as well. Now the responsibility is that neighbor who's being served is responsible if that information is not correct,
Okay.
not the local food pantry or the food bank.
And then she asked, and I think you answered it, but I just want to clarify, a client cannot receive commodities from more than one food
No.
pantry, correct? Okay.
But that's not something the food pantry has to police. That's on the neighbor, correct?
That's also on the neighbor. They're signing when they receive those commodities each month that they have not received it anywhere else.
But then if they don't, and then we recognize it from, we bring it to their attention and they said, well, I only went that one time, I won't go back, So we have good connection with our local,
Yeah.
well, not local, but our adjoining town, their pantry. So we
Yeah.
keep a close eye on it.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions for Reverend Metters or Jeff or Cindy? All right, let's see in the chat. Do you anticipate any changes or reductions in availability to the service going forward?
I don't. I actually expect that the TFAP program, the regular food commodities for all ages, I anticipate that will increase if tariffs continue to be an issue. One of the things that will happen is that the government will end up buying up farmers' commodities, and they will distribute that out through the Feeding America food banks across the nation. That's what happened during the last Trump administration. I truly expect that to be the same case this time. We're working closely with Feeding America and Senator Bozeman, who leads the Agriculture Committee, and others to make sure that the Feeding America network is positioned to be able to be the distribution organization if and when the time is necessary for those additional foods.
All right. Any other questions? That was a good segue for yourself, Jeff.
Yeah.
Do you want to speak to what food banks are facing as the cost of food increases and incoming tariffs and things like that? If you can just give us kind of a big picture of what it looks
Sure.
like trying to get food from the food bank.
Yeah, so since 2022, inflation has increased nationally by roughly 20%. So it's 9.9% in 22, 5.8 in 23, 2.9 in 24. And if depending on who you look at, inflation is predicted between 2.5 and 2.7% for this calendar year. All of that means that food is harder to get. We need to find more monies to buy more food or to buy sometimes the same amount of food even. The other things that go along with food inflation, or some of the causes of food inflation, is supply chain issues, of course, and extreme weathers events, crop yields. We saw at the beginning of the war in Ukraine that the war itself had an effect on the price of our grains, for instance. With weather, we from time to time are going to have cold spells during the late spring that cause our fruit harvest to be different and all kinds of things like that. So you've got those basic things. You also have some input costs that cause some inflation issues. Those input costs would be the cost of fertilizer or transportation, or even the tariffs that we've already kind of mentioned themselves. So all that kind of goes in there. Um, we also know because of egg prices that, bird flu and those kinds of things can be an issue and can cause some inflation for specific pieces of our food, pieces, sections of our grocery store, if you will. So all of those are some of the things that are affecting our ability to really do what we need to do and do it well. The other thing that affects the food banks and really the hunger relief network, our ability to do our work, is capacity of our organizations. Capacity of the food banks. Those 6 regional food banks can only hold so much food at one time. In North Central Arkansas, we expanded in 2020. We moved into a new facility that almost tripled our capacity in terms of warehouse and cold storage. And I will tell you that in about 90 days, we were packed to the gills, and I wish we would have built on, quite a bit more. One of the things that we noticed, though, as we expanded our warehousing and our cold storage space, we moved the bottleneck, and we were glad to do that. So we were able to accept donated foods that we had not been able to do in the past. In fact, the CSFP, that Senior Food Box Program, we've been able to do that. And we're distributing about almost 1,400 boxes out to senior citizens every month through our agency network. And so we never would have had the ability to do that in our older facility. We just didn't have the space. So now we had that space, but then y'all have asked the question, how much more space do I need to have in my agency to be able to take on that role or that program? And so the bottleneck just moves a little bit down the road. So agency members of our Feeding America networks are the capacity there is huge, and of course, cold storage in any of our facilities is a big piece to do as well. On average, before we moved into our facility, we were turning away as many as 3 semi-loads of food a month that would have been donated. And so we have not had to do that recently, but we do have to sometimes be creative in the ways that we move food quickly. We're moving about 500,000 pounds of food a month on our busiest months. And so we have to make sure that as food is coming in, that we're able to get that out of our warehouse quickly and into the agency's hands so that those local members can then turn around and make sure that our tables are full for the neighbors that we all serve. Here's some stuff that's important, at least from my perspective. The team asked me to talk a little bit about the importance of developing partnerships that can help you access food. Your membership with the Food Bank of North Central Arkansas or any of our other 5 regional food banks is crucial in you being able to really do the most good for the least amount of money. And that is because we do have access to the federal programs and to the retail donation outlets like Walmart and Aldi's and Dollar General stores and other organizations like that. But in any given year, the Food Bank of North Central Arkansas distributes about 4.5 million pounds of food. And we estimate that we save the organizations that we serve, we're able to save them typically between $7 and $8 million collectively. There's just under 90 organizations that are a part of that network. And so, for instance, just as an idea, we estimate that we save the Yellville area food closet in Yellville, Arkansas, about roughly $250,000 a year on food cost alone. Depends on which local pantry that you're looking at in our network itself. But typically, the organizations that we serve spend about 5 to 10 cents a pound on a shared maintenance fee to receive the food that they do. So you can imagine that could be a game changer for your organization if you're not already involved in that way. I want to step a little bit in a different direction for a moment. I want to encourage you to do SNAP food stamps. So SNAP and WIC outreach in your organization. Someone said to me the other day, "Well, that doesn't really help the food bank, does it?" And I said, "Oh, yeah, absolutely it does." Because for me, as a food bank CEO, I really want to look at how can we undergird the people that we serve with the most resources that we possibly can. And if WIC or SNAP can take care of a portion of my neighbor's food budget, then that's less that myself and our local pantries are going to have to care for. If you are interested in knowing more about SNAP or WIC outreach, I'll be glad to visit with any of you. I'll also connect you with our partners at the Arkansas Hunger Relief Alliance. But we, for instance, have a card that is the 5 steps to getting enrolled in WIC. And we have a SNAP application. By the way, that SNAP application is 30 pages long. Do not get freaked out about that. Call us, call the Alliance, and we will get you a copy of what actually has to be filled out. And we just highlight the handful of questions that you actually have to do. So in addition to the commodity programs like TFAP and CSFP that we've been talking about, the food banks also offer and this will be region specific. So our food bank offers the summer meal program and the after school meal program. Those are meal programs designed for children under the age of 18, and where the TFAP and the CSFP is income eligible on the household, the summer and after school meal programs are income eligible. Are program eligible on the basis of the community that they live in. And so that's based a lot on the local school district and their free and reduced meal numbers and other indicators. But for instance, Mountain Home School District, they have several campuses for different grade levels. We have areas of Mountain Home that you could not do a summer or after school meal program in. But if you were closer to the kindergarten or some of the elementary schools where those numbers are higher, free and reduced meal numbers, then you would qualify. Retail donations are vital. We're looking at last year we did about 500,000 pounds of rescued food from our retail stores. We've just done a new route system throughout our service area to do visits to these stores. We anticipate or estimate, I guess you should say, that we should be able to be just receiving or rescuing about 1.4 million pounds of food annually.
Jeff,
And so,
I have a question about that really quick. How do you suggest local food pantries go about reaching out to those retailers, especially those who are kind of adverse maybe to donating to the food pantry?
Well, first I would tell you that membership in your food bank is the biggest piece because Feeding America has corporate relationships and contracts with Walmart and with Aldi's and Starbucks and Panera Bread and Dollar General, and the list just goes on and on. So if you're not a member of the food bank, then you're not going to have access to those programs. You may have smaller, locally owned businesses or whatever. And then I would just say, gosh, you need to be building relationships with them, inviting them to volunteer with you, the leadership team, inviting them to come and visit your organization, like someone said earlier, on the busiest day of your month. Going where they are. So if they are in Rotary, join Rotary and become friends with them and sit at their table every month. If they, whatever it is, find your way to become their best friend and help them understand. I believe everything's based on relationships. Our church ministries are, our nonprofit ministries are, life is in general. When we build good, strong relationships, God will work through us and through our organizations to provide for his people. And I just really believe that. I think that we have the greatest example as Christians, Jesus Christ, and the development of relationships with his disciples. And I'm reminded often that Jesus walked up to James and John and Peter and said, "Stop what you're doing. You need to follow me." And he didn't pause or worry about how to do that. He just went and said, "Hey guys, I've got a project for you and I want you to be a part of this." And they did. And so most of the time when we ask people, especially people that we're in relationships with, they're going to step up and they're going to follow us, and they're going to try to do good alongside of us. So that's my best guess there. Um, y'all, if you're not doing locally donated food, you need to. Food drives. We have realtors in the North Central Board of Realtors that provides food for all of the Baxter and Marion and some of the Izard County food pantries every year at Christmas. Your schools do this, your churches can do this. Make sure that um, if there's a civic organization or any kind of organization out there that you're pushing them to do some food drive for you or help you buy food in some way or another. We're actually doing a lot of growing our own food as well, and I would encourage you to do this. Thank you, Mackie and the Methodist Foundation of Arkansas, for a generous contribution to those efforts last fall. But we raise about 20,000 pounds of food annually, and it's all fresh produce, locally grown. Um, and it gives us a way to teach people how to grow their own food. And nothing better than some good fresh produce. We have 32 apple trees, we're about to have four. We're about to split our 2 beehives and create 4 beehives because it's that time of year. We have 18 raised beds, and we've just about finished our 19th one. We just put in or we're in the process of putting in a raised bed that's made out of recycled wine bottles and beer bottles. So Jesus, I hope will say grace over that, because I can't ask for enough forgiveness. I did not drink any of this. We went and got the wine and the beer from other places, but I have been known to do such things, so I shouldn't. Let's change the subject. And then the last thing I said on my notes here was grant writing. If you've got a Casey's General Store or a Walmart, any of the businesses in your town or in your community, gas stations or otherwise, Google, you know, Walmart Foundation or Casey's General Store Foundation and find out. There's watch commercials on TV. Lots of organizations, businesses are out there that are saying, they're bragging in their commercials about the good work that they're doing in the community, Home Depot and Lowe's and otherwise. So think about all those places. But in terms of getting access to food, I think the biggest hurdle we've all got to get over is the cost of it. And so we're going to have to take a kind of a multi-layered approach there, in my opinion.
All right, thank you, Jeff. Let me check. Kelly, are you with us? Did you?
I am.
Oh,
yeah.
Go ahead, Mary Lewis.
Sorry, as you were talking, Jeff, I had a few questions. That might be helpful to everybody. One is, you talked about the summer and after school meals, or what kind of food is that, and what qualifies you for those programs?
So the qualifying part is you qualify if you are under the age of 18 and you live in a community that qualifies.
I'm sorry, as an agency, how can you qualify to pass it out? Yeah.
So as a agency, you in this time of year, if you want to do a summer program, you need to be reaching out to your regional food bank and applying to be a site or being a part of their site if they are doing that. If your regional food bank does that program, this is the time of year. The open application is open through April, the end of April, and we're in the process now of putting our application together for the summer. In the school year for the after school meals, that time zone is like August and September. You want to be communicating with your food bank. If your food bank is not doing that, and you call them and they say they're not, then you need to reach out to the Arkansas Hunger Relief Alliance and you need to ask for Jasmine Zandy. Jasmine is the person that oversees that program. And quite frankly, call me. We do it. We can direct ship to you. I'll have to do a workaround with the other CEOs at your food bank, but I'm not scared to ask. All they can do is say no.
And these are boxes of food that can go home with the children.
Yeah, so we're looking, you can do the summer program either congregate, meaning they all sit around and congregate around a table and eat it, or you can do it non-congregate, which is drive through and drive home with their stuff, grab and go. So we're looking at two different models. One is a box of 30 or 25 to 30 Ziploc bags full of the meal. And if it's congregate, they open up that box and they pass out the 30 different bags. But with our non-congregate, with the drive-through stuff, we're actually looking at boxes that have 7 meals in them for the week. So you're getting those already put together on a pallet and delivered to you. And as Mary Lewis's car comes through the drive, you just, for every kid that she has in the car, you send a box home with her, and there's the 7 meals for the week.
That's great. Thank you, Jeff.
Yes.
I wanted to just to say to all of you, Jeff and I have been together this week for other reasons, and the SNAP and the WIC outreach, you do not have to fill out the application. You can help fill out the application. The Arkansas Hunger Relief Alliance will send volunteers to you to either talk to your clients or to train you to talk to your clients about SNAP and WIC. And I think I've heard the percentage that around 30% of food insecurity for a family can be lowered by being a part of these programs. So if you don't know if your clients are on these, you need to find out and you need to help them get on those if they're not, because that will ultimately reduce your budget needs as well. And then we'll quickly, the last thing you heard Jeff talk about is having a relationship with Senator Bozeman and the work Congress is doing and your state legislator. Another way to reduce your budgets is for our federal and state governments to support the work of the Feeding Network and Charitable Gift Food Network. Invite your local person to come see what you do, again, on their busiest day. We like that, Cindy Jackson. And so they can understand what you as an agency are needing out of their work in legislating access to food. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's all I had. Thank you. Sorry.
I see in the chat that Sam suggested going to local banks and your local grocery stores. Some of them might give out gift cards. And then Regina said they did a personal outreach to their local trunking company that the refused food from the semi trucks, they got donated to them. Is that what you meant by that?
Yes, we actually, we have a Walmart distribution center about 25 miles from here. And we started seeing occasionally that truckers would, their entire load would be refused for almost nothing. You know, it's just crazy reasons. And they would have this load of food that they were supposed to go dump. And some of them would just come find us. So we decided to just kind of do a letter writing and a calling campaign to people that dispatch trucks. And we had a lot of resources of people that knew people. And we just started reaching out, and we regularly are lucky enough, these trucks have found us, and they will come by and bring truckloads of lettuce or broccoli, all kinds of fresh produce, truckload at a time. So that's been a good addition for us.
Thank you. All right, Kelly, I'm gonna ask you a couple of questions. I know it's kind of ironic we're going to talk about community partnership when I know you and your community partners are probably doing a whole lot down there in Jackson County after yesterday.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about the partnerships that Newport First has created with the community in Jackson County? And let's start there.
Okay. Yes, and I'm sorry that my camera's broken, so but I am here. So I can't add too much more than what, Jeff said. We do have we have some friendships and partnerships with our local grocery store, which is called Food Smart. We ended up having, and I'm sure it's because of our membership with the food bank in Northeast Arkansas, but Dollar General is giving to us. We also have a relationship with our local farmers market that's sharing produce with us. And then this newest thing that we're doing is we're going to grow some produce for people that came out of farmers market. It came out of the senior center, some folks who wanted to grow some food and then wanted some help to do it. So one of the partnerships that we've discovered is that agriculture students in high school and in FFAs have a requirement that's called a supported agricultural experiment. And all of those students get some credit for doing that. And so we just went to the local high school teacher for ag and said, hey, are there some students we could talk to that would be interested? And she said, oh, we want to do that. Let me just get some people together. So that's happening. And I think they had been doing it kind of for some neighbors. But anyway, we're going to do that for the food bank and for our senior center this summer, and then just see where that takes us. I'm not particularly trying to start a community garden, but there's some people who might be interested in that. And so we're just going to try to get these. I'm especially excited that it's kids that want to learn more about agriculture. And of course, through that is a friendship that we had with the cooperative extension, which came about really through some things they were giving out to people about nutrition and healthy eating. But they also really want to help people, that's what they're there for, to learn to grow food and all of those kinds of things. So we keep offering and reaching out to people to say, what would you like to eat? All that kind of stuff. So cooperative extension is in every county and they're always willing to help and do things.
Kelly, what advice would you give to people who maybe haven't reached out to those
Places.
places?
So cooperative extension is pretty easy. One of the ways we had a hook that I didn't know at first was there's kids in my congregation who are part of 4-H, right? And so they wanted to take part in it and were really curious about it. And that also, I'm glad you said that, because the other thing, people who have kind of come forward, one of the things that happened was it made people curious about what we were going to do. And so the some parents who are homeschooling but using 4-H to help them do that are also interested in growing food for people, and that came about. And so I'm talking to them now and we're looking at what we might do together. And so anyway, it just kind of, the curiosity, was a big factor in that. Through the high school, I know you guys have kids in your, I have one student in my church who is he takes agriculture classes, but the link was that those students were really doing a lot in the schools to talk about feeding people. They were the ones trying to, gather some food and talk about it. So they were having conversations with the food pantry, I guess is really the link there. But going to the high school was how I met this teacher. So anyway, those were some.
Did you find it easier to work with like statewide coalitions such as like your local extension agency, or was it easier to build a relationship with a place like Food Smart?
It was more people, of course, in a small town knew the high school people than they did know, Dollar General or the other people that were here. So I would say that those already friendships and connections were already there. And so that build on that. And that was very helpful. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any advice of how to build those relationships if you don't have that connection like you all seem to have had?
Um, so in my neighborhood, and I walk around my neighborhood, I have this circuit, and there's people in my neighborhood that I peek into their backyards when I'm walking by, not as a stalker, but as a person of interest.
Uh-oh, we may have lost Kelly.
From Ellie.
While we're waiting on Kelly to come back, part of one of the questions we're asking, y'all have asked, or Judy asked earlier, is, how do we find out what's already existing in our community? Another thing to think about is, how do we get those stakeholders to understand what's happening in our community? And so I wonder what it would look like, as Kelly said, to invite your county extension office along with store managers or bank managers or into service with you, or to even just to a lunch to talk about it. Part of what our hope is that you find community partners who can provide supplements to your budget so that your grant writing doesn't have to be as big. And Kelly's done a great job at figuring out how to develop those partnerships. And I'm sure many of you have too. If we can get Kelly back, that'd be great. If not, what are some of the community partners that have surprised you that you found in your community where others might could look?
I would encourage, Kelly was talking about students in 4-H and other programs, but the East program, if you have an East program at your school, they can champion things in ways that students in general can, but especially these students that are involved in the East program, they can champion stuff that we could work on for years. And because they are students, their age opens a door to possibilities that I can no longer open. I'll give you the example of Patty Barker and Vivian Nicholson, team at the Arkansas Hunger Relief Alliance No Kid Hungry campaign, and I worked with one school district for multiple years and just kept hitting roadblocks in terms of getting alternative forms of breakfast available. The East program took it on as a project, and within one school year, we were doing second chance breakfast and grab and go breakfast at junior high and high school campuses in that school district. And so, utilize those students.
Absolutely. I know in Elm Springs, they formed a partnership with a local bakery, and everything that they didn't sell the day before, they donated to the Soul Food Pantry at Elm Springs United Methodist Church. And so the people in their pantry got fresh bread and got cakes and pies and things that you might not always access. And it just took asking them if they were willing to do that, and they were more than happy to. I think Newport internet has gone with the storms. So I think we've lost Kelly for the rest of the afternoon. So I'm going to turn it over to Michelle, who is going to be our fun part of the afternoon, to show us how, if we've never done any of this before, or if we need help finding resources or writing something, how AI can help us in that task.
Yeah, I'm about to cut everybody's workload here because I'm just sitting here listening to all these ideas, which are wonderful. Part of me is also thinking most of these food pantries are primarily volunteer, and like, how much more can we add onto people's plates? Well, we're gonna about cut it in half instead of add more to it. So I am going to talk to you a little bit about how AI can be helpful in your food ministry. First, just a general definition of AI. It refers to machines or computer systems that can perform tasks that typically require human intelligence, like learning, reasoning, problem solving, and understanding language. And you are already using AI, I guarantee you. If you ask Siri anything, if you ask Alexa anything, using Google Maps, you're using AI. AI is all like when you get a prompt, like it's an autofill on an email or on a text, that's all AI. So for all the people that are a little bit nervous and terrified about AI, welcome to the world. It's already here. But what I have found is that it can be an incredibly useful tool. So when you're confronting maybe some of those attitudes about why should we use AI? What do we, what if it's a scary thing? How hard is it to work with? That sort of thing. We're gonna see how easy it is in just a minute here. But I can say this, when you've got people that are hesitant about it, let me put it to you this way, it levels the playing field in a lot of ways. If you are a small food pantry up against ones that maybe have more resources, or, like you are maybe a small team of volunteers, you now have a tool at your hand that will do so much of the work for you and help you be able to make some of those deadlines, apply for some of those grants that you might not otherwise be able to do. It'll also help you identify grants that are applicable to you, and it does it in a more efficient way than like a Google search. So for instance, you can do a Google search. You can put into a Google search, what are some food or feeding grants that I can apply for. And I'm going to use Cindy for some of this example, since she's kicked us off, and I'm going to use Bentonville for some. But what are some grants I could apply for in Arkadelphia, Arkansas? It's gonna a Google search is just gonna pull a million different options, because it's going to look for keywords, and everywhere that keyword shows up, it's going to give you that list of things. What it will not tell you is whether you're actually eligible for those or not. Whereas a tool like ChatGPT, you can put in information about your particular feeding ministry, and it will self-select down. It will search through at least anything that's publicly accessible as far as applying for the grant. It will automatically look for certain markers, and I'll show you that in a minute here. So it saves you a lot of time in that sense, and that it's going to do a lot of that culling that might otherwise take you quite a bit of time. It is really like adding a new volunteer or a new staff member to your team. And for the most part, it's a free service. I will make a case for considering paying for ChatGPT, because there are a few things that it does a little bit better, or there are some capabilities that it has that are only available on the paid version. The paid version is $20 a month. But we'll kind of see. I'll talk through some of those options in just a minute here. But I do want to share that one of the key things of learning how to really work effectively with AI is knowing how to prompt it. So I've just recently taken a course on AI for nonprofits, and I'm going to share with you one of the slides that they had, which is craft prompt writing, and it talks about, if you're going to put a prompt in, if you can include all of these elements, it will make your prompt writing much more effective, and you'll get better results. So it says, when you're writing your prompt into AI, be sure to include your context or any meaningful or relevant contextual information. Include your register, which is to specify what writing style it is. Like if you're having it help craft a grant application, let it know that this is for a grant application. If you're having it write a blog, help you come up with a blog post, you can tell it in that writing style. The tone and the cultural considerations that are at work. A is the acting role, assigning roles or perspectives for targeted responses. I'm going to give you some examples of this so that you'll be able to see it. But basically it's who is the actor, who's at work in this prompt, and what is needed from it. And then the format, provide a clear structural and formatting requirements for the outputs. The clearer you can make it, the more detailed you can make it, the more likely you're going to generate the information that you actually need. And then the task, which is to clearly define what you're asking of the AI. So that kind of keep that craft idea in mind for how you're going to create a prompt, because the better your prompt is, the better your results. Now, I'm going to share a couple of different AI tools that are out there. One of them that I've really just started experimenting with, which is Notebook LM. Notebook LM is through Google, and it is free. You can pay for a higher version, but I've found that the free version is very robust. And what Notebook LM does really well is if you load in data, you can ask it to analyze it. Students can like load in their class notes and ask it to quiz them, that sort of thing. But I'm going to show an example of what I did with Notebook LM. So I went out to the Arkansas Food Bank and swiped their audit for 3 years and their annual report for 3 years. Okay. Which you can download. It's freely available on their website. And I pulled that information just to kind of show you what is possible out there. So let me share my screen again, and we'll look at Notebook LM. So this was just going into a new project. You can see over on the left-hand side where I added a source, and I added all of those audit reports and their annual reports. And then you can see the prompt well, actually I had it analyze it and ask it to kind of summarize what was important about it. And this was what it did. It kind of reviewed those things. And then I could ask, based on all of this information over here, like I could ask it to make projections on what fundraising needs would be based on what the trends that are seen there. I can ask it to, if looking at the annual reports, what are some compelling reasons that people might want to give to food banks? It can lift those things out. You can, it will do that kind of analysis. I will also tell you a kind of a cool thing that this one does is generates a podcast. Oh, I need to go back and when I do my share, I need to choose to share sound. So let me do that real quick, because the podcast can be used. Okay, you could technically release a podcast on behalf of your food pantry with using this information. I will tell you the 2 voices that are used for every podcast that they generate on this. So very quickly, people are going to recognize, oh, this is a Notebook LM generated podcast. So you might just declare that, like put a little tag at the beginning that says that's the case, just so people don't accuse you of like false representation. But what is also helpful, and this might be helpful for you as a grant writer, is it kind of puts in a sort of talkable way all the information that you've had in there, and it might help you sort of humanize your grant writing that you need to do. It's very strange to say use a computer to humanize your grant writing, but I'm gonna share this with you, and you can hear. I will just listen to a little bit of
this deep dive. Today we're going behind the scenes at the Arkansas Food Bank.
Oh, sounds interesting.
It is, and we've got quite a bit of material to dig into.
Like what?
Well, we've got their financial statements starting from 2021, then 2022, and even the first half of 2023.
Wow, so we're really getting a snapshot of how things have been going for them recently.
Exactly, and to add to that, we've also got their annual reports for those same years, plus a funding proposal they've put together.
So we can really see the whole picture, like their finances, their activities, and even their plans for the future.
Yeah, and to top it off, we've even got this really cool photo of the food bank itself.
Oh, I love when we have visuals.
Me too. It really helps bring things to life.
What do y'all think about that?
That's insane.
Isn't that crazy? But like, say you've got to commute to work back and forth, that sort of thing. You've got this grant that you got to work on. It took about, I don't know, 4 minutes for Notebook LM to take that information and generate a podcast about it. And then I could download it and use it, to listen to as I'm getting ready to go into work, kind of trying to prep the grant, right? So just a fun little bit there. Notebook LM is really good at what data you give it, analyzing that data, and being able to then respond to that. ChatGPT is way better at going out and searching the world. So we're going to look at a little bit. I'm going to show you what I did with the exact same information. And I'm going to talk in general terms of how they think this is helpful for food banks. And then I have my food banks. I asked my food bank for their reports, and we're gonna real time play with my food bank's annual reports and have it do some projections for us and have it do some grant searching and all that. So, but first I want to share with you one that I did, again, using the food bank information that was out there and available. So you can see that I told it what I was going to do. I'm going to load 3 years of audit reports for the Arkansas Food Bank. Can you analyze the data and project what fundraising needs the food bank will have based on the trends in the reports? So I loaded those 3 reports, and it looked at what data was out there, and then made some projections. And then it analyzed that and gave some key takeaways, the key financial trends that are available, like revenues dropped 48.4% in 2023. But they did have a decline in total expenses, which they may have had to because, they didn't have as much money. All that sort of thing. There's a projected 2024 outlook. Their revenue is projected to decline. Contributions may remain stable. Grants may drop. And all of this is based on what the information is in the reports. It cannot know if you were going to apply for new grants or that sort of thing. It can just get a sense of what's how things are trending based on the information that's out there. So it'll tell you what your in order to cover the projected shortfall, you need a fundraising gap of at least 2 million in 2024. And so these are some recommendations of how you might address those, right? As a small food pantry, you could not do this on your own unless you had a volunteer who was like a super accountant who wanted to just take your numbers and crunch them and do all of that. You don't have to rely on having that volunteer anymore. You can load your own reports in and have it do this work for you. So then I added the annual reports and asked it to make a targeted presentation to focus on why increased support is needed, including key financial trends, impact data, and a compelling call to action. So it took all of that, and then it made me an Arkansas Food Bank support proposal. And then I asked it for 2 infographics. Now, graphs are one of the things that the paid version does. Can you see the graph that I had there? Did it pop up? Okay. Let me stop sharing and I'll come back in and show it. I need to do screen share is what I need to do. So I ask it to generate 2 graphs, and this is one of the ones that it did. So if I needed, something visual to go in my report that's easy and clear to read. So it's meals distributed and volunteers, both mapped on that. And that, like I said, images are something that the free version does not do, or at least it didn't the last time that I checked. But and so sometimes that may be a significant thing. Another thing that the free version doesn't do is give you unlimited time. You only get to work with ChatGPT for 40 minutes to an hour, and then it'll make you take a break. and it'll tell you when you can come back. As part of the free version, and that really started to irritate me, so that was part of the reason that I bought it. But I did ask it to make it a 5-slide pitch deck. Now the deck that it will oh, I've saved it. The deck that it will generate is very basic. It does not do the, you know, like pretty picture to it, but this is just loaded straight into a PowerPoint, and I could change the design of it really, really easily. But yeah, so it just put kind of those key things in for me. And y'all, it took me about I don't know, about less than 10 minutes to do all of this up to this point. It does source itself, by the way. Whenever you ask it for stuff, I said, can you access Arkansas census data on poverty? So it tells me yes, and here's the source, and you can click on them and it will take you there. Do you find any specific details on food insecurity in Arkansas? And this is what it came up with. Could you integrate some of that information into the slide deck? Which actually, that was the deck that I showed you, was that one. So since we've been sitting here, Cindy, I put in for y'all, are there any grants available to help fund feeding ministries for a food pantry in Arkadelphia, Arkansas that is classified as a religious organization ministry? And these are the ones that came up. And then you just have to click right here and it will take you to the website that you want to apply for. So according to this one, Blue and You mini grants are eligible for churches. And then the Clark County Community Foundation Giving Tree Grants, Arkansas Community Foundation, Food Security, USDA, Acorn Project. And then it does still tell you to, you know, double check the eligibility on it. But yeah, so you see how much work it did for you and really not a lot of time. Okay, so like I said, I'm gonna do a real-time play around with my own food ministries information. And to start out, I did pre-build a prompt for it. So I'm gonna get that prompt going real quick, and then I will bring you all in on that.
So what program are you using right now to do the real time chat?
This is ChatGPT. Yeah, that ChatGPT is my buddy. I mean,
Free version.
we're good. No, it's not the free version, it's the paid. So I'll just be upfront with that. But yeah, it and I are in really good terms. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to ChatGPT. Okay, so I said, yeah.
So one of the things that I learned in using this for grant writing in particular is that you do want to log in and use,
Yes.
you know, like you want to log in it because it learns your organization. So the more stuff I put in, the more it is like analyzing and learning about me. So then I don't have to every time put, you know, here's all of, you know, here's my mission statement and my vision and all that stuff. I don't have to do that every time. But the more I put in there, the more it learns and then is putting things out that I need. So I just wanted to point out, like, make sure you log in when you get going because it helps.
Yes. And I will also say, like, you could load in a previous grant that you did and say, okay, this is a typical grant application that I do. And then if you load in a new grant that you're looking at, you can ask it to help you fill out the grant. Now, I do not encourage you to just let it answer all the questions and then submit the grant first. I mean, you can let it answer all the questions, but then go back and edit and adjust, because ChatGPT will learn your writing style. Sam's right. As you load more information in, it will start to match your writing style. But it also still has a pretty common syntax that shows up across the board. And so people are starting to recognize when ChatGPT has completed things. And just for an ethical reasons, you want to make sure that you've had a hand in this. I mean, if it's pulling stuff from stuff that you've previously written, it's just basically copying and pasting and doing the adjustment that's needed, like to put it in the application. But, don't just have it fill out grant applications for you. Have it go at it for the first run, and then you go back and make your adjustments based on how you want to, like I said, humanize the response here. Okay, so I'm going to load up my Second Street Pantry ministry information, and I've been very specific on my data. Like I said, I'm going to load data from our church's food pantry, the Second Street food pantry. The data goes from January 2020 to January 2025. Pay attention to column D and E on the spreadsheets. Column D is the number of households we serve. Column E is the number of individuals total in those households. Looking at 2023 and 2024 numbers, because I don't really want 2020. It was a weird year. I don't really want 21 or 22 for that same reason. Looking at 2023 and 2024 numbers, as well as the 1 month we have for 2025, can you project what the number of households and individuals in those households we should anticipate serving for the entirety of 2025 if trends continue as they have from 2023? Oh, yes, I'll upload it again. Every once in a while that happens. This particular Excel workbook takes place over three workbooks. So it says, based on the trends from 2023 and 2024, you can expect to serve approximately 8,455 households, 70,077 individuals in total for 2025 if the current growth patterns continue. So now if I want to know, so how much of a percentage increase is that from 2024? Okay, so we have a decrease in households, but an increase in individuals. So, so that the size of households being served is increasing significantly. So that will help us know, like, when we're applying to grants, we can put that kind of projected information in, right? Then another thing that I could do, and I'll do this real quick and then share, is when it comes to seeking community partners, so I just asked it to look at the values of Rotary International and then look at our food bank and come up with a letter to go to Rotary International as to why they should support our food bank. So let's see what it did. Okay. Dear members of the Rotary Club of Bentonville, tells you to put your name in. Oh, it says Arkadelphia. We'll have to fix it.
That's why you have to proofread.
Yep, exactly. But here, aligning with Rotary's core values. So it defines what Rotary's core values are, and then you have to, like I said, I would go back and say, oops, can you make this for the food bank in Bentonville, not in Arkadelphia? Which I'll show you how to do in just a second here. But it shows some ways that we could be in community together, right? See, fixed. And you can do things like, okay, using this information about the change in need, if we're applying for a new freezer, why would we need a new freezer based on this data that we have, right? If you were looking at a grant, there's just all kinds of ways that you can have this as a partner for helping you do your work. I mean, in all honesty, it can do so many things so fast that would take volunteer hours, so many volunteer hours. I mean, like I said, I always, like, a lot of times I give it, like, based on this research, what's a compelling pitch? And then, or based on these trends, what do my regular givers need to know about our pantry's needs? If I'm trying to encourage new givers, what would they like to hear? And whether I exactly use that or not, so a lot of times it helps me think through, I wouldn't say exactly like that, but because you will still know your context better, you will still know your people better. And so, but what it can do is kind of get you going so they can be like, okay, I would actually emphasize this. I would say this, but it got me moving down that road. So, it's just, I tell people, think of if you had a full-time administrative assistant, what could that administrative assistant do? And so for me, like generating letters, is it easy? Yes, I can ask an administrative assistant to generate a letter for me. It's not research I'm trying to publish. I'm not trying to pass it off as my own work. Like I said, if you use that podcast, put a disclaimer on it, say it was generated by Notebook LM, but using these resources, or you record a little intro piece to it, something along those lines. So that I would just encourage you to maintain your integrity, but use these tools to save you a lot of time.
Michelle, what advice do you have? I mean, because I'm not gonna lie, AI is still kind of scary to me too. So what advice do you have if someone in the feeding ministry wants to use it as a resource, but they're getting pushback from their fellow congregation members?
Yeah, I would say, I think that's a good opportunity to say, well, come sit down and let's play with it and let's just experiment. We don't have to use what it does, but let's just see what it could do. And then let's ask the question, it's one of those things of, if it's doing that kind of grunt work that took us hours, and now we can take those hours, and instead of sitting and poring over numbers, we can now go out and meet community partners because we have that time. Think about the time that you'll be able to reclaim and what that can mean for your ministry, right? But I think honestly, the besides making that sort of case, just sitting and playing with it is, I have seen more people change their mind by just experimenting than anything else. Once they've realized, oh, and it is thinking, it is reasoning at a different level than, like I said, a Google search does. And there's interesting ethical questions around that, but also it is freeing you up for more relational work. And I think that that is going to make a huge difference in our society. We are not necessarily so bound down by the mechanical stuff that we have to do as much anymore. We have machines that can do a lot of that for us now. So.
Thank you. Martha is interested in the AI class that you took. If you want to just put that in the chat, if it's accessible to everybody.
It's if you're a member of TechSoup, if you've applied to be able to purchase things through TechSoup, which is a technology company that specializes in selling to nonprofits. If you're not a TechSoup member, I encourage you to be a TechSoup member. It actually doesn't cost you anything, but you do have to submit your 501c3 information. And then it gives you all kinds of discounts. Like you can buy, you can get Adobe products at, really, really cheap. You can get Microsoft products cheaper. You can buy computers and things like that at a deeply discounted rate. But they have also started offering all kinds of classes. And this was one of them. And you can only you had to enroll in it, and then you have access to the material. But I would encourage you to investigate TechSoup because it's a good resource, but also ask ChatGPT if there are other classes, or ask ChatGPT to teach you some of these things. Ask it how AI can be used for nonprofits. I asked it, the very first presentation I did on AI was how AI could be used in the church, and I asked it, how could I use you in the church? And it gave me a lot of ideas. So strangely enough, that's another thing that you can do. So yeah.
I really see this,
Thank you.
data is data. And so I really see that as doing a quick deep dive on the data for your county or your context, but then adding your stories of impact from your own food ministry experience. Mackie, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that would make a very strong application and talking points to your community partners. It's those stories of impact that you kind of need to listen to and gather as well.
And you should have more time to do that. You take out all this data analysis that's taking everybody's time.
Does anyone have any questions? We're winding down here. Anyone have any questions for Michelle or for any of our presenters today?
I don't have a question. I have just something I'm going to throw out there. I know y'all are different parts of the state, but if you're ever down south, we would welcome you to stop by and visit our pantry. Justin knows Mackie and Mary Lewis. We're very proud of our pantry. We'd love to show it off. I would also like to come to y'all's pantry and see. Every time I walk into one, I leave out learning something that I can carry back and use at our pantry. So I appreciate all of y'all do.
Hey, Donna. You're late. I'm so sorry. But is there any way to get the recording? I saw that it's recorded. Watch it.
Yes, we're recording it, Donna, and we'll also have AI notes. We think that you can skip to certain parts within. It's taking notes and making note of what people are saying and what questions are being asked, and it will summarize that for you as well, Donna. Mackie, you unmuted. Do you have something you want to add?
No, I was just, I think maybe I was getting ready to say, thank you all.
Well, I was about to give you an opportunity to talk about your grant process. Ours just closed for the spring, but if you want to take a second to tell them how to apply for the foundation's feeding grants.
Sure. Well, it's very simple, and the application is found on our website, Methodist Foundation for Arkansas. Go under Ministries. On that drop down, look for grants, and when you go to the main grant page, you'll see on the right hand side a series of applications, and there's one there that says Feeding Ministries Grant. You complete that, and it forward it back to me. The one thing that we do with our grants from the foundation is we do review those and make decisions on those monthly. So if you get something in before the end of the month, you do get an answer 2 weeks later when the grant committee meets, because we do make grants year round. I think last year we awarded around $160,000 for feeding ministry grants in the state. And we're committed. The foundation's committed to do that, and we'll operate under that guise as long as we have funds available to do that, knowing that that is one of the major issues for churches and communities. And it's a very simple process, and you can email or call me anytime with a particular question if you need guidance or just in general. Anytime is the right time to call me. Matter of fact, I just gotten an email while we've been on the call from a particular church. Sent me a question and said, could we apply for such and such for our feeding ministry, and how would I do that? And I've just responded this afternoon while we've been talking to say you can do it right now. Go to the website, look for the application, and so we're always accessible, always ready to answer your questions, ready to help as best we can. So, and it's better, it's easier for us, Foundation, if we can have the conversation either face to face or Zoom or over the phone. Those who apply and offer grants, and it's interesting, Michelle, we can now begin to tell when some of these applications come in, when they are when they come through ChatGPT, because they do have similarities, but there again, it's good to know who we're dealing with, and that personal touch for us is always more desirable. But you do write excellent grants. Every once in a while, I will say to somebody, "Man, that's one of the best grants I've ever had the opportunity to read." But you're getting better at it, and but still, the personal touch is what we like. So I guess that's all, Samantha.
Thank you. All right. Well, I don't want to keep us much longer after 4. So if you need to go, thank you for joining us. This will be posted on our website. And like Mary Lewis said, AI Notes should email you after I end this call. But for those of you that can stay, we'd love to hear what you learned today. Me personally, I did not know you could upload things into ChatGPT for it to data analyze. So that was new information for me. So if anyone else would like to share what they learned today.
Mary Lewis, I was just looking at your message in regards to the SNAP program. Just to have further conversation with our local representatives, what is the limit that you're referring to?
So to qualify for SNAP, families can't have more than $2,000 in the bank. And as soon as they get $2,000 in the bank, they get kicked off of SNAP. And so that's why we are the top state in the country for food insecurity. Our asset limit, I think Jeff Quick can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we're one of like 5 states with that low of an asset limit. And so it also creates a very long, arduous application. And so the Arkansas Hunger Relief Alliance is working really hard with state legislators to talk about increasing that asset limit so that you don't get kicked off so much. So think about in the pandemic, a lot of people were getting extra help, but as soon as they got to that asset limit, they got kicked out of SNAP. And like I said, SNAP reduces food insecurity the most. I mean, by far than any charitable giving that can be done. And so understanding SNAP, that asset limit, and talking to your state legislators and getting them to start considering, honestly, if we could remove that limit, that doesn't mean that SNAP goes to everybody. But if you can remove that asset limit, you're going to eventually have less people needing charitable food and less people needing to be on SNAP long-term because they have been able to build up a personal savings account. That's one of the reasons. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Go ahead. Yeah.
So it doesn't have anything, if I'm a individual or single, for a single mother who's got 3 kids and I have $2,100 in the bank, but I've got a minimum wage job. It has nothing to do with income or any of that. It's just strictly
asset limits. I think your home and maybe your car are exempt from that asset limit. Is that right, Jeff? Is
I
nodding
think
his
they
head.
are.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but like Justin, if you're that single mom and you have $2,100 in the bank, like you said, and you also have your burial spot, you're over the asset limit. Doesn't matter how much your income is.
That's correct.
If you have a four-wheeler or a boat or an RV, there's all kinds of things that tie in there. And so, you know, eventually it's impossible for us to help move people out of poverty. In our world at the Food Bank of North Central Arkansas, we really believe like we want you to begin to save money for that crisis in your
Yeah.
life. Let's say the transmission goes out on your car, you shouldn't have to to have nothing. And so we are perpetuating
Well, you're
poverty.
punishing people. You're punishing people for trying to get themselves off their feet.
Right.
Right.
Or the opposite is we're incentivizing poverty.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Right. Well, that's good information.
And I would encourage that anytime that you speak to an elected official about raising it, do what Mary Louise just said.
Get rid of it.
Better yet, get rid of it altogether. There's 30 or I think there's 34. Don't hold me to that number, but I believe there's 34 states in the nation that don't have a poverty or don't have a SNAP asset limit at all. And you look at the differences in their food insecurity rates versus Arkansas, and you begin to realize that Arkansas has decided, as a matter of policy, to have hunger.
That's where we could go in and use AI to get us some numbers to compare it to present to them.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, and we're in a small community, and we know, and our senator and both of them are from Crossett. We know them well, and so that's
Yep.
something we can definitely
talk
with them about and make them aware if they aren't already aware.
Senator Dismayne.
We'll be inviting them to dinner.
Senator Dismayne has taken this on as kind of a lead person across the state. He's a Republican from Central Arkansas, and I would encourage them to talk, as we talk to our representatives and senators, encourage them to talk to Senator Dismayne as well.
Will you send that name through the chat?
Oh, I'll probably misspell it, but I will.
That's why I wanted you to do it.
And Justin, I will send you an email. We hosted a SNAP training at Arkadelphia for their food pantry volunteers to get trained to help people fill out the application. So if that's something you all are interested in, we can set that up down there as well.
Great, thank you.
I think I corrected maybe Jeff Quick's spelling. I think it's Dismang. Jonathan.
Yes, it is Dismang, and it's Jonathan. I was Googling Mary Liz. I should have used ChatGPT. Sorry.
But you can also use ChatGPT to understand the arguments against SNAP. The working requirements and all that. Make sure you know what you're talking about when you talk to them. But I firmly believe, and I think one of the biggest arguments is our asset limit is what keeps us at the top.
Yeah, and the federal safety net, Mary Louise alluded to this earlier, but the federal safety net in terms of hunger relief does about 20 to 25 times what the charitable food network does across the nation. So, when that goes back to the question that someone asked earlier of me, do you know about the current administration and what we have to look forward to? But regardless of administrations, anytime that there's a risk for our farm bill or for SNAP asset limits or other, statewide issues, we really need to be vocal and advocate for the people that we serve. It's not enough to feed hungry people. We have to advocate for them, and we have to help them move from poverty to from poverty to middle class, and eliminate hunger in our neighborhoods.
Okay, I've had the training for the SNAP, but how do you do you set up a day that they come to the pantry or somewhere in town and you help them fill out their papers? How does that work?
It can be a variety of things. If you're trained to do it, you can help them fill it out when they come to your feeding ministry. The Arkansas Hunger Relief Alliance will send their representatives to your food pantry and they can help them fill it out. Or you can pick a place in town and either you help them fill it out or the Hunger Relief Alliance can come and help them fill it out. So there are a variety of options.
We encourage our agencies that are part of our network to ask every neighbor every time, are you receiving SNAP? And if not, would you like to have us help you complete the application today? We ask our partner organizations to do that in a private setting, and to
Yeah.
immediately put that application into an envelope and seal it. And we also say to them that it is our responsibility as organization leaders to take that to DHS or directly to the post office and mail it. Do not let it land back on your desk, because I mean, my desk is pretty clean today, but not always.
I also just put in the chat, we have one of the lowest rates of using WIC funding. And so be asking those young moms, pregnant moms or whatever, if they're also signed up for WIC. And I think they have to go into the local office in order to sign up. Is that correct, Jeff?
Yeah, so the 5 steps for that are say, yes, I want to make an appointment. And then as a pantry leader, pick up the phone and call the local health unit and get an appointment scheduled. You may have to put the person that you're serving on the phone with them to get that appointment made. But then they get an appointment made, and during that appointment, they will go through a nutrition screening, and they will have the SNAP or the WIC benefits put onto a card, and they will walk out of there with their WIC benefits ready to go. Depending on the way that they qualify, they may have to go in monthly to reload their benefits card. If they qualify differently, they may only have to go in once a quarter. But transportation is always a significant issue. And so we encourage our pantry partners to also ask, do you have the transportation means to get you to that appointment? And is there a way for us to help you if not? And so then you just got to know what your resources are in your community. Do you have public transportation? Do you have, we have an organization in Mountain Home called Kindness Incorporated. That's all they do is they take people to hair appointments and doctor's appointments and WIC appointments, whatever they've got going on. So, our pastor encouraged us today, challenged us today to do something good for others. And so I would encourage you to reach out to people in your church and say, hey, I need some help getting someone to a WIC appointment. It's pretty easy.
Absolutely. Any other questions, thoughts, things we need to celebrate?
I want to celebrate the fact that the United Methodist Church in Arkansas is so dedicated to feeding the hungry. It's unique. It's unique that we have such great relationships with all the regional food banks and the Arkansas Hunger Relief Alliance. We have a lot of people doing good work. And so I think that's one reason I am frustrated. We are still number 1 at the top because everybody's is working so incredibly hard and intentionally to meet the needs of the hungry. So. And thank you to Mackie. Always, 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 always.
Yes.
Yeah. What the foundation does to support the work of 200,000 More Reasons and the annual conference in the local church is just, it's immeasurable, even in dollars.
Thank you.
Thank you all for joining us today. And yes, especially thank you to the Methodist Foundation for Arkansas for sponsoring this panel. I hope you have found it helpful. I hope you've come away from with some ideas. I hope you are not as scared of ChatGPT as you might have been before we started. If you'll keep the Northeast District in your prayers, like I said, Kelly got cut off because the internet went out. I got a notification that the the tornado that hit Newport, they did rank an EF4. So we've got lots of little communities up here that are blown away. So if you'll just keep us in your prayers going through this week and this next month, and the Volunteers in Mission and all of our ERT certified volunteers. And like I said, this is recorded, and it will be posted on our website, and we will share it with the foundation to share with their folks. And but thank you so much for joining us, and have a good rest of your Sunday.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.